Hello, everybody. My name is Shoebill, and at the time of recording this, I'm actually self-isolating. I've got a case of COVID going on right now. Very interesting. I'm symptomatic, but the symptoms are really mild. I'm all right. I'm doing all right. I wouldn't be bothered, but I've had to miss a show in Leeds where I would have met Gorshit after a year. Over a year actually. It was just after February. I can't remember, but regardless, this little video is going to be split into two things. I wanted to show how I do amens and how I do this kind of sample choppy, pitchy kind of shit that I do. I'm not going to go into like every I'm not going to go into like, oh, I use vengeance kicks because I'm a knobhead, and I go into like the respace. I'll maybe go briefly into the respace at the end, but mainly those are the two things I'm going to focus on. First off, since this is breakcore, I'll talk about the breaks. So these are the breaks that I use predominantly now. I used to use another sample. It was this full one that I used to use. I think I used it for like years now, but I changed over to this one that my friend Sonny Shimoda gave me, which is actually a rip from a Drum Corps live set from I believe Breakcore Gives Me Wood. It's a really, really lovely amen, really nicely compressed, and it's good to build off of. I don't just use it on its own. So this is the mixer for it. Really, all I do is I'll add some EQ, a sound godizer, and then just finish it off with a fruity love filter. And this is for this track. This is what I did with the EQ. You may call me a madman, but this does work. So a lot of the also what you will notice is a lot of the work that I do relies on compression and compressors to make it not sound as shit, but still pretty shit. Anyway, without further ado, this is basically the amens that I do. Like, it sounds very clean because it's also running through the master effects, which is a Maximus. If it will open, a Maximus, an OTT, and then just like a little final EQ that I just plop on. Any audio engineers, any professional audio engineers who have been in the field and have got degrees and stuff like that, probably screaming at me right now. I learned this OTT method through Simi from SKRD, Splitcore Records. He told me this kind of method with this, but it really does do a great job of just kind of nicely stopping things from clipping too bad and stuff like that. It softens things off really nicely. So my main what am I doing? My main advice with amens that I've discovered is they will sound really, really great when you actually make them kind of match with the vocals of the sample that you're using. So in this case, I've got well, actually no, I'll go back to the bewitched part. Here we go. Sorry, I get lost because as you can see, it's so complex. So yeah, this is the chorus, quote unquote, of this track. So what you will kind of notice when you listen to that is how kind of the sequence will not strictly, but will kind of loosely match with kind of the movement and the rhythm of the and the pitch, the kind of the notes of the vocals. So I've got a latte in my Hatsune Miku mug, my bootleg Miku mug I've had since I was like 12. So what I often do is obviously the kick and the snare is what is the kind of the meat and the bones of the amen, and the hi hats throughout it, like the open hi hats and the closed hi hats. They're kind of the obviously fill-ins, if you will. I'm not a percussionist, by the way. I don't really understand anything to do with music theory. I got like a D in music GCSEs, but then an A star in music composition because I just know how to, you know. But as you can see, the way that the kick and the snare will kind of that's what's kind of guiding its entire secret. It's kind of I will place the kick and the snare where the most kind of dominant vocals are, if that makes sense. So where there would be kind of spaces is obviously that's getting filled in, but the kick and the snare is what will kind of define the rhythm when you're going with the sample. I don't know if I'm making any sense. I'm autistic, so I just kind of ramble, but this should just make sense. I think this should just give an idea into people kind of to try this out, because it will kind of make it seem like you musically know what you're doing rather than just kind of plonking down notes willy-nilly. I'm actually using the original, just normal slicer. I usually use Slice X, but I decided to play with this for this one. And I quite like, I never knew this, but there is actually like a little built-in granulizer in it. And speaking of granulizers, another little trick, a little tip from the big man himself is the use of granular, especially granular. I like to, I've done the whole kick, hi-hat, snare, like I've granulized them and I've done little sequences with them. With this one I've just done a snare, but here it is. This is all I did. I just kind of set the settings to be like there, that's off to the left, that's off to the right. I'll turn the attack up to maintain kind of the beginning of the snare, which is where the impact is, and then the granulization will kind of crossfade into that in a nice way, and it'll maintain the kind of the power, but also, you know, add the kind of glitchy IDM-y kind of stuff. Granulizing, this is what will kind of set you apart and kind of make you a bit more Venetian snaresy, kind of more serious, a bit more taken seriously when you kind of implement the snare in the amen where it is appropriate. Often I like to use it at the end of little sequences before they go off into other, you know, bars and stuff like that. At the end of bars, that's probably what I should have just said. And with this, now this is kind of what I consider will knock people's socks off, is kind of the use of the snare in a melodic sense. So again, if we go back to what I was saying about trying to kind of replicate the rhythm and the pitch and, you know, the movements of the sample's vocals with the amen, this is a great example and can kind of I think Candy Sync, the Japanese artist, he does this kind of stuff a lot. It's a bit stupid, it's a bit cheesy, but it's also cool, and that's really all we give a shit about. I also encourage the use of, obviously, other breaks within the sequences. I kind of slap myself in the face. I don't really do this enough, but I like, when I do it, it always comes out really well when you'll randomly implement a different break kind of at the end of a bar, kind of like, I think this is, no, that's the granulizer. Yeah, here we go. So I use the, this is from the, this is it's from the free pack, everyone has it, the Rhythm Labs amens. You know what these are. I think I use a selection of these throughout the track, in the kind of similar veins. I also use the funky drummer, wherever that is. So at this bit, when I sample the Dubliners, I actually I use a think break, a very quick think break here. I use this think break in a slower build up part of the track. The track is up, by the way. You can listen to it, the full thing, in the SoundCloud link below. and that's it's as simple as that. There's no like kind of mad transitions between them, as long as you kind of, I think, just matching the volume and the general EQ. They don't, the EQ doesn't have to match perfectly, but as long as they kind of feel like, they exist within the same realm of existence, then that'll or don't, just do what you want. I don't really give a shit. Another thing I just wanted to mention about the amens is the kind of my use of filters and automating filters. So I've actually got a few love filter automation clips for different amens, and some for the actual samples for the Westlife and Bewitched sample. But for this one, so let me just play the amen itself. So yeah, it's just another little interesting sound that you can make. I don't really utilize it too greatly throughout the track, but stuff like, in the middle of a sequence where there might be kind of a tightly chopped arrangement of snares, you can usually do this sound kind of in the middle of while like a sequence is going, and that can add a bit of intrigue, a bit of interest to the sound. But yeah, other than that, it's not really it's not a huge deal, but that is something that like is a thing that people do. Really, I think that is all I want to say about the breaks. There's all other just stuff like that, a little tip, Alt U that opens this little. Is that coming up on OBS? Yeah, it is. This opens up a chopper. I use this all the time. This is this is how I pitch stuff. I just pitch it in the fine pitch control and the piano roll. I like to slide stuff as well here. That's really all I want to say about the amen. So I go on to the samples and kind of how I chop them up. So this is not a complex process. It's actually like one of the most, it's less complex and hard to do, and more just kind of tedious. It's very tedious work when you especially when you devote an entire track. I've done tracks where I've done it throughout the whole thing, and they will take like a few days. And stuff like this, I kind of spare it. I'll use them in certain sections, but then I'll just leave it for choruses and stuff like that. But really, it's as simple as kind of, you just kind of go through it, and where certain beats will start, you just repeat it. You do a little manual slicey, repeaty kind of stuff, shit like that. Usually I'll just go through by now, excuse my lack of advanced fucking musical jargon, but if you go through like 2 in a beat and then like 4 in a beat and stuff like that, that's really the crux of what I do. Sometimes I'll go crazy and I'll do like really very just kind of extra tony fucking, you know what I mean. It's very it's as simple as just do what you want, make your own little rhythms with it. So this is actually, the rhythm isn't like that. It's just it's like the rest of them. But if you repeat them with this kind of offbeat thing, then it gives it a bit more. It makes it feel like more, IDM, different time signatures, stuff like that. It gives it, it's just a bit more chaotic. It's something that I like to do. But do stuff like this as well, where you kind of you gate. I don't know if gate would be the right word, but basically, shit like that. It's shit that you'd find in that you'd see a D-Blue glitch doing and stuff like that. I like just doing it manually. I do have D-Blue glitch. I do use it occasionally in certain places, but I don't actually usually use it in Shoebill tracks. I just kind of I prefer to do it all manually. It gives me more control. Now, the pitching is also a very simple process. Literally, I automate it through just the pitch knob in the sampler. It's as simple as, and I set the range to 12, which is the octaves. It's the octave range. So it's a very simple case of, usually what I do is that I will save the 50% points, which is the halfway, the normal setting. I'll save that value in my clipboard. And then kind of as I work, what I do is I'll often double right click and just paste in immediately, and then, you know, I'll just go all the way up, all the way down, you know, shit like that. It's a very simple process, really. Again, it's just it's one of those kind of just tedious things that you do alongside with it, but it will kind of all just come naturally as you work on these sequences. It's like an amen. It's like making an amen sequence. You're just kind of sitting there clicking and dragging and doing that for like an hour, and it's very boring and you want to kill yourself, but at the end of it, it's a good result. What I just want to point out though is that the way that, you know, FL is kind of processing the samples. The key here is I've also set the mode to stretch. I'm able to pitch things individually with this pitch knob in the time stretcher, and then I can individually also pitch it with this knob, which is how I pitch it, you know, on Octaves. But yeah, the way that this stretching mode works is that it, you know, so as you can see, I do these little sweep downs and not a lot of sweep ups. There's one sweep up here, but I don't. It's a bit tricky with sweeping up, as opposed to sweeping down. When you sweep up, and I'll just demonstrate this right now. So if I just cut this here, and then I set it to raise here. As you can hear, there's a bit of a gap between these two samples because it's like slightly speeding it up as well as you ramp up the pitch. It doesn't do it when you just, you know, kind of binarily, you know, 50% all the way to 100% and 0%. It doesn't do it that way, but it's just this kind of movement, this interpolation, if you will, of the pitch that will add that gap. It doesn't do this on the other way though. If I pitch it down. So, you know, if you want, I recommend just, if you're going to sweep, always sweep down unless you know what you're doing. The only method actually, so I'll just teach you, the only method that does work, but it is a bit janky, is if you just extend this clip a bit out, but, you know, it will kind of intersect. It's a bit grummy, it's a bit shitty, but it does fix the problem. So if you really want to do that, then that's a fix. Final thing I wanted to discuss with this kind of this method of chopping up and sampling is that this can make samples that don't really have, like, samples with a variable tempo, you know, stuff like folk music, acoustic, stuff like that, where obviously a tempo wasn't used, so the BPM is kind of everywhere. You can then sample and you can easily match it to the BPM through chopping it up like this. So stuff like with the Westlife samples and stuff like that, like they all have fixed BPMs. They were, you know, made professionally with software, probably like very early software and stuff like that. But in the case of the Dubliners, the Irish folk band, who were, you know, doing shit in the 70s, that's not really a thing you can do.
And as I went home on Friday night, as drunk could be, I saw a head upon the bed.
So as you can hear, there's no BPM. It's a folk song from the 70s, I believe. So it's not gonna have a fucking BPM. But I did attempt to basically like vaguely stretch it. I used the chorus here.
You're drunk, you silly old fool.
There is actually a little bit more of a, you know, a fixed BPM, but it's still a bit janky. But, you know, I synced it to the BPM from here, but then when I included it here, so as you can see and kind of hear and stuff like that,
on
its own, it sounds fucking stupid, but paired with the amen and stuff like that, it sounds very good. But the method is very simply like where I'm very simply just kind of chopping and sliding. I'm using a shift and scroll, and I'll like kind of slide the sample, the where the actual transients of sorts would really be starting at the BPM. And often, yeah, it does work very well. It doesn't really cut off things too badly and stuff like that. It all kind of it compresses. It's almost like a compression. You're compressing the sample down into an actual BPM and losing unwanted information in the process. That's how compression works. I learned that in film school.
My old head should be, well, I called me wife and I said to her, will you